All right, so here we come to the close of the Canterbury Tales. So we're going to have our last few characters here, the last four, including two of the big ones, and then two not so important guys. So let's start with the first of the not so important guys, who's a very short one called the Manciple. All right, and the Manciple is going to have he's one of those not so fleshed out characters, to be honest with you. So let's read about him. It says the Manciple came from the inner temple. All caterers might follow his example in buying victuals. He was never rash, whether he bought on credit or paid cash. So what we have here is a guy who's basically, I would say, like an office manager kind of for the inner temple, which even though it's the word temple here, it's not a religious entity. It's probably a section for, it's a group of lawyers. All right, so it's a legal setting. So he's basically buying food and stuff that they need, supplies, and he's really good at it. It says he he never jumped the gun. He only bought things when the prices were low, and he could get good deals. So he's smart. All right. Since he used to watch the market most precisely and go in first, and so he did quite nicely. And now, isn't it a marvel of God's grace that an illiterate fellow can outpace the wisdom of a heap of learned men? So here's his flaw. He basically he's lied on his resume. Okay, he shouldn't have gotten this job with the fact that he's illiterate, meaning he can't read. So the fact, though, is that, and this is why I like this guy, is that despite this, he's become very good at his job. The next lines, look at him. It says, his masters, he had more than 30 then, all versed in the abstrusest legal knowledge, could have produced a dozen from their college fit to be stewards in land and rents and game to any peer in England you could name, and show him how to live on what he had, debt-free, unless, of course, the peer were mad, or be as frugal as he might desire, and they were fit to help about the shire. In any legal case there was to try, and yet this Manciple could wipe he's better than the people they train here at the Inner Temple. So I guess office manager is being a little bit unkind. He's like a paralegal, maybe would be a better, like more modern term, but he knows the law better than anybody there. And so the people they train there aren't nearly as good as him. So what's this flaw? Well, I mean, the fact is that he's not got one. He's guilty of lying to get a job, which is obviously not a good thing to do. But beyond that, he seems to have not been really saddled with a major flaw. Um, I wouldn't call him an ideal character, though. I mean, I feel like that's unfair because he's obviously got a flaw in that he lied. What sin do you want to attach to him? Don't. I just feel like he's not really needing of one. And next we got the Reeve. The Reeve has a lot of similarities with the Manciple, so on the test they're going to be separated. But the Reeve is basically still kind of the same thing. He's a manager of sorts, but instead of working for a bunch of lawyers, he works for a lord of some sort of a manor, like a wealthy landowner type thing. So let's read a little about the Reeve. It says the Reeve was old and choleric and thin. His beard was shaven close to the skin. His shorn hair came abruptly to a stop above his ears, and he was docked on top, just like a priest in front. His legs were lean. His legs were lean like sticks they were, and no calves were to be seen. So right, this isn't a good-looking guy. He's got not much of a beard. His hair is really short. He is very skinny and weak. And just when he says choleric, it means he's grouchy. So this guy's just not a pleasant person. Okay. He kept his bends and garters very trim. No auditor could gain a point on him. And he could judge by watching drought and rain the yield he might expect from seed and grain. His master's sheep, his animals and hens, pigs, horses, dairies, stores, and cattle pens were wholly trusted to his government. So he's in charge of this whole, in all this land and all the crops and the farm animals and things like that. And he's really good at knowing, what to expect. He's really good at saying, okay, well, I think we're going to get this much this year, and then they come in with that much that year. So he's smart. He knows his job. All right. He was under contract to present the accounts right from his master's earliest years. No one had ever caught him in arrears. No bailiff, serf, or herdsman dared to kick. He knew their dodges, knew their every trick. Feared like the plague he was by those beneath. He had a lovely dwelling on a heath, shadowed and green by trees above the sward. So I get from this that he's kind of like that people can't like catch him being sneaky with money. He seems to have all of his records and account. He kind of works, I would say, kind of as a tax collector himself. People below him, he knows what they owe, and he makes sure they pay. So he's not a popular guy by any stretch. A better hand at bargains than his lord, he had grown rich and had a store of treasure well tucked away. Yet out it came to pleasure his lord with subtle loans or gifts of goods. Now, I'm not sure why I feel this way, but I really feel like this guy's doing something shifty. All right, he's got complete control over all of his lord's lands and things like that. So it would be really easy for him to steal. And somehow he's managed to put aside a ton of extra wealth he probably shouldn't have. And ironically, what he does with it is he loans money to his lord out of the money he stole. So that's it. That's a nice gimmick he's got going there. So it says, let me find where I was. To earn his thanks and even coats and hoods. When young, he learned a useful trade and skill. He was a carpenter of first-rate skill. The stallion cob he rode at a slow trot was dapple gray and bore the name of Scott. He wore an overcoat of bluish shade and rather long. He had a rusty blade slung at his side. He came, as I heard tell, from Norfolk near a place called Baldiswell. He rode the hindmost of our cavalcade. He rides the back. No one's with him because no one likes him. Not a pleasant fellow. So what kind of sin does he have? Well, again, we get this image that a lot of the characters in this are thieves. He's a thief as well. Um, and he's using it to kind of make himself look more impressive to his lord. Apparently his lord's an idiot, because you would think he might catch on to why this guy got so much money, but he doesn't. All right. Now we come to the end, the last two characters. These last two characters, in my opinion, are number 1 and 2, or like number 1A and 1B as far as the bad guys in the Canterbury Tales. Okay. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things attached to them that are not comfortable to talk about, but we're going to do it because I feel like I owe you that. All right. So let's start with the summoner. The summoner for me is the top. He would be number 1 or 1A if you want to break. These guys are both pretty bad, but the summoner would be 1A. So his job basically is, if a person has been found to be in a habit of continual sin of some sort, eventually when the church gets involved, they'll send a summoner to call this person to summon them before the authorities. And I'll discuss different punishments, including excommunication. Excommunication being an idea of being kicked out of the church. And the way it worked back then is, if you were excommunicated, that was basically being sentenced to hell. That was it. You weren't part of the church. You didn't get to go to heaven. So this guy has a lot of responsibility. He's a very important person. And let's see what he does with that responsibility. So there was a summoner with us in the place who had a fire-red cherubinish face, for he had carbuncles. His eyes were narrow. He was as hot and lecherous as a sparrow. Black scabby brows he had and a thick beard. Children were afraid when he appeared. Lots to unpack there. This guy is not a good-looking guy. Very red face. Carbuncles are pus-filled boils. They're just gross sores. Not like zits, like worse times 50. Zits all over his face. So these boils, and they're oozing stuff that we're going to find out in a minute that no medicine will fix. And there's a reason for that, at least in Chaucer's world. Now, he's also got black, scabby eyebrows. Just a really ugly guy. And so when it says children were afraid when he appeared, the natural inclination here to keep it rated G is that he is scary looking, so kids are scared of him. But this is Chaucer, and Chaucer's always working with undercurrent. So I believe there's more to that. This, again, a very uncomfortable topic of pedophilia, but it's probably that this guy's a child molester, more than likely, because of the fact that it specifically says children are afraid of him. Yes, a lot of things will say it's just that he's ugly, but I feel like based on what Chaucer does with his character, there's more to it. In fact, he calls him lecherous as a sparrow, and lechery is a lust term. To a lecher is someone who like stares at people lustfully and is constantly a dirty old man. Is really what he is. So that fits with those imagery. Again, I told you, when we're going to make an assumption about a character, we want to make sure we have several backing statements. And lecherous as a sparrow tied to this makes me think that perhaps that my view that maybe he's a pedophile is legit too. Okay, it says, no quicksilver, lead ointments, tartar creams, boracic, no nor brimstone, so it seems, can make a sow that had the power to bite, or clean up or cure his whelks of knobby white, or purge the pimples sitting on his cheeks. So that's where I said no medicine would fix it. Garlic he loved, and onions too, and leeks. Gross. Those are 3 foods that give you bad breath. So not only is he ugly and a potentially pedophile, he's got stinky breath too. It says, in drinking strong wine till all was hazy. Then he would shout and jabber as if crazy, and wouldn't speak a word except in Latin when he was drunk, such tags as he was pat in. He only had a few, say 2 or 3, that he had mugged up out of some decree. So he gets drunk and he starts jabbering in Latin, but he only has the same 2 or 3 phrases that he keeps breaking out that he doesn't really understand. He just uses them over and over. No wonder, for he had heard them every day. And as you know, a man could teach a jay to call out Walter better than the Pope. But had you tried to test his wits and grope for more, you'd have found nothing in the bag. They're saying basically those are only phrases he knows. He tried to talk to him in Latin. He doesn't know any of it. Which, again, religious figures or religious members of the religious group at this time should know Latin, especially someone as high up as he is. Then quaestio quid juris was his tag. By the way, at the bottom of the book, it tells you that is the question is, what is the point of the law? All right. He was a gentle varlet and a kind one. There's Charles Chaucer being sarcastic. We have enough details to know this guy's not a kind varlet. Uh, no better fellow. If you went to find one, of course we can find better fellows. He would allow, just for a quart of wine, any good lad to keep a concubine a 12-month and dispense it altogether. So again, having a mistress at this point would have been considered a sin, and the fact that the summoner would have been told to go and summon this person, and he's letting them buy him off at a quart of wine, which isn't much, tells you that he's not a fine fellow, as Chaucer jokingly says. Says, yet he could pluck a finch to leave no feather, and if he found some rascal with a maid, he would instruct him not to be afraid in such a case of the archdeacon's curse, unless the rascal's soul was in his purse. So what he's saying here is if he catches somebody doing something wrong, he tells them, look, as long as you pay me, don't worry about the archdeacon's curse is excommunication, which we mentioned earlier. So he's like, look, pay me off, and I'll make sure you don't get excommunicated. Since for in his purse the punishment should be. Purse is the good archdeacon's hell, said he. But well I know he lied in what he said. A curse should put up a guilty man in dread. For curses kill, as striving brings salvation. We should beware of excommunication. So Chaucer takes a little side note there to say, hey, this guy's wrong. Definitely be scared of excommunication. Now, Chaucer may be joking, okay, to be honest with you. Chaucer may or may not be totally on board with the concept of the Catholic Church and excommunication. The way he portrays them here, I'm thinking he probably doesn't have a lot of good to say. All right, but well, I know he lied in what he said. I'm sorry, we read that part, didn't we? Okay, here we go. Thus as he pleased, the man could bring duress on any young fellow in the diocese. He knew their secrets, they did what he said. He wore a garland set upon his head, large as a holly bush upon a stake, outside an alehouse, and he had a cake around one, which he was his joke to wield as if it were intended for a shield. So he's blackmailing people, getting them to keep paying him, or he's going to threaten them with excommunication. And then finally, it ends with the detail that he has a cake, a cake that he uses as a shield, and just jokingly because he's a joke. All right, not a good character. I put him at the top because he's not only ripping people off and threatening them and putting their very souls in danger, and at least under their way of saying things, he also is a molests kids. So obviously, bad dude. Now the next one's the partner, and I'm going to try to be careful with how I word some of the stuff about the partner. Okay. I would put the partner at 2 because of, again, his complete lack of concern about the evil he's doing. Some of you are going to put him at 2 or 1 because of a different thing about him, which I feel is unfair. All right. So let's talk about him. He and a gentle partner rode together. So the summoner and partner are buddies, and they're together. A bird from Charing Cross of the same feather, just back from visiting the court of Rome, he loudly sang, come hither, love, come home. The summoner sang deep seconds to this song. No trumpet ever sounded half so strong. So the first little clue we've got that's important is that the partner sings a higher register than does the summoner. The summoner's got a deep voice. The partner's got a high-pitched voice. But that detail by itself doesn't mean anything, but wait, okay? The partner had hair as yellow as wax, hanging down smoothly like a hank of flax. In driblets fell his locks behind his head, down to his shoulders, which they overspread. Thinly they fell, like rat tails, one by one. Well, it sounds kind of gross there, the term rat tails, but you got this long, stringy, blonde hair. Okay. He wore no hood upon his head for fun. Now, there's more to that too. It goes with add this in with our high-pitched voice, doesn't wear a hat. Let's keep going. The hood inside his wallet had been stowed. He aimed at riding in the latest mode. But for a little cap, his head was bare, and he had bulging eyeballs like a hare. He'd sewed a holy relic onto his cap. His wallet lay before him on his lap. Brimful of pardons come from Rome all hot. Okay, the fact that they came all hot indicates these are probably counterfeit pardons. A lot of them would have been. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're not real anyway. You can't buy your way out of hell or into heaven. But again, not only are these not officially Pope signed documents, they're probably counterfeited. It said he had the same small voice a goat has got. His chin no beard had harbored, nor would harbor. Okay, he can't grow a beard. Again, today that happens. We don't think much of that. But now we have 3 things. We have that he's, let's see, what were they again? He sings in a high-pitched note, the fact that he's not wearing a hat when all the other men are, and then also we have now that he can't grow a beard. And the beard growth in this time period really was associated with, how manly you were. So this guy's not manly at all. But then here comes the big evidence that Chaucer means us to say something about this guy. His smoother than any chin was left by a barber. I judge he was a gelding or a mare. Okay, that's a female horse or a horse that has been neutered. So we've got a couple of things about this guy. Chaucer's, let's put it kindly, he's saying he's very feminine, okay? See, a lot of you unfairly will put him at number 1 or 2 because of that one detail, which is ridiculous. That by itself would not put him as a bad character. But what we're about to, first of all, he's got the counterfeit pardons. That's one. Here's some more on the next page, though. So let's scoot over. As to his trade from Berwick down to Ware, there was no partner of equal grace. For in his trunk he had a pillowcase, which he asserted was Our Lady's veil. He said he had a goblet of the sail. St. Peter had the time he made bold to walk the waves until Jesus Christ took hold. He had a cross of metal set with stones, and in a glass a rubble of pig's bones. And with these relics, any time he found some poor up-country parson to astound, on one short day and money down, he drew more than the parson in a month or two. So he's got all these fake relics that he uses to impress people and also to really fatten his wallet, because it says he can make more money selling those in a day than a parson can make in 2 months. So and I'm sure he's not using these out of the money out of his kind of kindness of his heart, and donating it. He's obviously using it for his own personal needs, personal wants. All right. So then by his flatteries and prevarication made monkeys of his priest and congregation. But still to do him justice first and last, in church he was a noble ecclesiast, how well he read a lesson or told a story, but best of all he sang an offertory. For well he knew that when the song was sung, he'd have to preach and tune his honey tongue, and well he could win silver from the crowd. That's why he sang so merrily and loud. This guy's an amazing preacher who's really good at preaching on one thing particular, which is greed. We're going to actually read the pardoner story next week. And see that parable about greed. But he's really good at that because he slams home the idea of greed so that people will give him money that he can then steal because he's greedy. You notice the irony. So he likes to make a mockery of the church and what it's about, and to trick the other members and just steal from them. It's completely all about himself. That's what makes him really bad in my book. Again, I would put him above somebody like the skipper who's killing people, because of the damage to people's souls that he's willing to cause. But in all honesty, the fact that he's feminine isn't what makes him a bad guy, so don't make that mistake. And when I ask you to tell about why characters are bad, don't say because of that, all right? That's not a good enough reason, okay? All right, if you'll notice, there's actually a little bit more to this. I'm not going to read it. I just wanted to get the characters. The rest of it basically explains what's going to happen. They're going to have a competition where each person's going to tell 2 stories on the way to Canterbury, 2 on the way back. The person who gets the best story is voted on as the best story. The host is going to decide that. Everyone else will pitch in and buy them a dinner when they get back. Kind of a small prize, right? But anyway, that is where we were going to end the Canterbury Tales briefly, enough to get us through the first quarter. Now remember, you guys have a test coming up where we're going to look at each of these characters and traits that match up with them. Then next week, we're going to look at 2 stories from the pardoner, one from him and one from the wife of Bath, as well as a sample story from the Decameron, which I have over here on my bookshelf. I'll show to you during class. And that is going to actually be what we think some of the stories from Chaucer's Tales, or at least the ideas, were based on. So we're going to do that next week. Then we're going to be getting into King Arthur's Tales. So we got some more interesting stuff coming up. But anyway, thank you guys for taking this journey with me through the Canterbury Tales. Those of you who were in class, and you can tell how much I love this. I really enjoy the Canterbury Tales, and I hope you got something out of it. All right. But anyway, good luck on the test, and thank you again for the time you put in to get through these. Those of you who've watched the videos, as of right now, I think the first and third videos have 0 views, so I'm guessing no one's watching them. But they're here if you need them. So, guys, have a great one. Good luck on your tests.